Hey YouTube, Kevin Clear here with a knife video for you. And today we're going to do a comparison. You guys know I like comparisons. This time though, we're not going to compare two knives. I love doing that. I have a bunch that I have sort of coming down the road. But today we're going to do a company comparison. And the two companies are two of my very favorites, Cold Steel and Spyderco. Okay, now you may say, I don't know if those are comparable companies, but here's what I want to submit to you by way of introduction. Both of these companies have a lot to offer in the $50 to $100, maybe to $115 price range. Now I will say Spyderco goes above that to some extent, but I think both of these are sort of everyman knife companies. Okay, they're the kind of companies that are going to be marketing to someone that just says, hey, I don't want just the cheap old whatever gas station folding knife. I want something a little better than that, and they're going to put some time and effort into finding something quality, but they're not this crazy enthusiast who wants to spend $3,000, $5,000, $1,000 or whatever or more. They just want a good knife. And so because I think these companies both fit that sort of niche, I think they're very comparable. All right, so let's go ahead and get started by talking about versatility. Okay, one of the things I think and I'm going to compare these in two different ways, okay? Versatility as a company, that is, what kind of spectrum are we dealing with when we talk about the products? And then versatility as a knife. If someone says, Kevin, I just need a really good quality folding knife, I want it to be cool, I want it to be well put together, what would you recommend? I really want to do everything with just the one knife. I think both of these companies have a fair bit to offer, but we're going to talk about that aspect of versatility as well. But let's start with versatility in terms of just models available. Okay, now Cold Steel, as you know, this is the Recon 1. This is a pretty standard offering. This is the Tough Light, and these are very different and fit a very different market. By the way, if you think this blade looks funny, it's because I did have to reprofile it. I bent the tip quite severely and had to grind it down a little bit. Anyway, these two knives are very, very different and fit very, very different sort of philosophies of use. There's obviously a lot of crossover. You got both two cutting edges here, but both of these are quite different. And then if we add, let's say, this and this, I think again there's some similarity, okay, but they're pretty significantly different in terms of design, in terms of their use, intended purpose, that kind of stuff is all quite different. And we've still got knives like the Code 4, which is one of my all-time favorite knives overall. And so Cold Steel has a fair bit of versatility. However, let's look at Spyderco for a second. Here is my Spyderco Paramilitary 2, and this is the Black Blade Digicam Para 2. However, you could also get the black handle satin finish, black handle black finish, and that doesn't even, you could also get the Digicam satin finish, plus any number of sprint runs. So just in one model from Spyderco, you can see that there's a lot of variation available. Okay, now consider, here's the Para 2, here's the Manix 2 XL, here's the Manix 2 Lightweight, here's the Endura, I should be leaving these open so you can kind of see the differences. Let's do it this way. So Para 2, Manix 2, Endura, Manix 2 XL, Tenacious, Native, very, very different. And most of these, in fact, I think all of them, now this is of course a variation, but take the Manix and you can get it in lightweight, in standard, in black, in serrated, in non-serrated. And so you talk about versatility in terms of models and model types, and I think Spyderco is quite versatile in terms of almost anything that you might be looking for, they can probably provide it, okay? And we haven't even pulled out the Zabo yet, which is, you know, a whole different thing again, right? So, versatility, Spyderco does well. And I want to make one other point about this general versatility. We've got Aussite steel and G10, Aussite steel and G10, Aussite steel and G10, Aussite steel and G10. Now, here we have Aussite steel and Grivery, Aussite steel and Grivery. Here we've got one bit of variation in an aluminum handle, but guess what? It's still Aussite steel. And so I think there's a bit of a broader spectrum when you look at Spyderco in terms of what's available. Okay, so in terms of general versatility, that's a versatile product line. Both have a lot of versatility, but Spyderco is just a little bit wider and offers maybe something for the collector, something for the guy who wants to know that not that many people have the same knife as I do. You know, the Stretch Ergonomics Super Blue, for example. Now, having pointed that out, I'm going to flip this on its head and take the Endura and let it sort of stand for Spyderco. Now, this knife is going to do a lot, okay? It's very versatile. It could do certainly defense. It could do, you know, vegetables and food prep at home or at the campsite. It could do EDC tasks, cardboard cutting, opening packages, whittling wood, you know, cutting a piece of thread off your sweater or a shoelace that's too long or something you're tangled up in. It can do a lot, okay? But if you're in a situation where you think, hey, I might be in trouble and I need a knife that I can really abuse and still depend on, I think you're going to find that cold steel has some offerings that are even more versatile. And I'm going to suggest to you this Code 4 is one of the most well-rounded knives on the market. You know, this is a hard use knife, it's a defensive knife, it's an EDC knife, it's a gentleman's knife. It just does everything and does it all pretty well. Okay, it's comfortable in hand, it carries really well because it's so thin. It is an exceptional blade. Plus you've got that triad lock, okay? And if you needed to baton with this, if you needed to, you know, bear down and push something, even if you needed to pry something, you know, there's a limit to all of those. But in any one of those hard use tasks, I would take the cold steel over the Endura any day of the week. And so if you say, you know, when the zombie apocalypse comes, which one do you want in your pocket? I want this one, okay? And so we could also say that about the American Lawman, or about the Recon 1, or even about the Holdout, okay? Now, is every cold steel knife more versatile than every Spyderco? No. Overall, though, they're making tougher, stronger knives that are more about utility than they are about coolness, okay? And that's a limitation to both, okay? That's a strike against both. Cold steel is like, hey, G10 is strong and it works, and the triad lock is strong and it works, so let's just use it for everything. Spyderco, you know, you've got a compression lock, you've got a back lock, you've got a ball bearing lock, sorry, I blanked on that one. You've got a liner lock, you've got another liner lock, and so there's more variation, there's more diversity of design, but you know, again, this is one of those knives that's like this knife, the American Lawman, is one that I often recommend to people because I really can't think of anything you do with a knife that this knife couldn't do fairly well. Okay, food prep, skinning on an animal, defending your life, cutting a rope, whittling wood, you know, you name it, this knife can do it. Is the same true of the Manix 2 lightweight? No, it's not as hard use, okay? Yes, it's a totally acceptable knife for most everyday carry tasks, but if, as I said, the zombie apocalypse comes, this is not necessarily the knife I want in my pocket. And I say that having already, you know, pointed out that I really, really like this knife. So, when it comes to diversity of design and versatility of, hey, I have a specific task and I want to do this, you're going to find a Spyderco that'll excel at it. But if you say, I want one knife that just does everything, and I want it to be so tough that if I'm really stuck and wish I had a fixed blade, it's still going to be okay, then you've got to go to cold steel. And so both, I think, are diverse and have a lot of versatility in different ways, though. One knife model being as versatile as possible. I think cold steel takes it. Multiple knife models with more interest and more specificity, so that almost anyone's going to find a knife they like. Go give that side of the equation to cold steel. Okay, so let's move on now, and this is somewhat related, but let's move on to cool factor and collectability. And because both of those things, I'm going to put them together because I feel like they're sort of subjective elements where you're now going beyond the person who just wants one good knife, you know. And the person who wants one good knife, hey, Spyderco Endura, great knife. You're likely never going to need another one for many, many years, okay? However, if you're interested in collecting knives, and if you want to have some things that are different and interesting, well, you've got this Endura, but you've also got a lightweight Endura, and you've got a stainless steel Endura, and this year coming out, you've got a Damascus titanium Endura, which I can't wait for, by the way. So, collectability and cool factor, man, you pull out a titanium Damascus Endura to cut something, people are going to be like, whoa, that is awesome. Especially knife guys are going to be like, man, just take a picture of it and let me stare at it for a while because it's cool, right? The Manix 2 XL, you know, this little guy, dark blue handle, S110V blade, just, this is a very attractive looking, interesting knife. Well, and here's one that really excels in this area, the Spyderco Zabo. You know, you've got the carbon fiber G10 laminate with this really cool blade shape, big thick piece of S30V steel with this interesting finish on it. Apparently it's not a DLC finish, it's something else. It almost looks like it's dyed. It's such a cool blade. And, you know, yeah, you take a knife out like that and people are going to be like, man, that is a cool knife. Now, am I saying that cold steel's blades are not cool? No. Man, look, you show this thing to anyone and they're going to be like, whoa, buddy, that's awesome, right? There's definitely a lot of what Nut and Fancy would call second kind of cool here. But overall, as a company, I think Spyderco does a little better in terms of just that extra little bit of interest, that extra little bit of coolness. You know, the Para 2, people are going to look at this and go, wow, that is just a cool knife, you know. Doesn't matter specifically what you're doing with it. People are going to look at it and go, hey, that's really neat. You know, the lock is different than what I'm used to. I like that spider hole. And then when they get it in hand, they're going to go, oh, by the way, it's also really comfortable and really useful. Okay, so when it comes to coolness and collectability, I think Spyderco far and away takes it. You know, let's come back to the Para 2 for a second. I have a few other Para 2s on the way to me. One in LMAX and one in S35 VN. And there's a number of others that I want. I'd really like to have all the Para 2 sprint runs. You know, that would be so cool. Well, I don't buy 5 Cold Steel Recon 1s. There's no reason to. And I love the one I have. I think this is a great knife, but I'm not interested in having 16 others, right? This one is fine. Now, some cold steels, okay, here we go. I just couldn't lay my hands on it there. So the large Espada, do I think there's a lot of cool factor to the, what I'm going to call the fancy Espada with the bolsters and the smooth G10? Yes, absolutely. That's a really, really awesome looking blade. So does Cold Steel have some knives like that? I'm sure they do. For this year, I'm on the email list for the Green G10 limited edition American Lawman. What an amazing knife. That is really cool. So there are those options with Spyderco, with Cold Steel, just not as many as there are with Spyderco. Okay, so let's now talk about value. I think both of these companies do a great job of giving you value for dollar. Does one of them do better? I don't know. Let's take a couple of knives that I think are comparable in terms of philosophy and just see how they're doing. These two knives are priced similarly, around $80, and they are both lockbacks. They're both going to be great everyday carry blades. You know, I'm not going to go back to Versatility. This one's going to be tougher, there's no question. If I was, you know, lost in the woods, this is the knife I'd want over this one. However, when we compare these two in terms of value, okay, it becomes a challenge, because here you're getting a better quality blade steel, okay? Here you're getting a little more versatility. Here you're getting some good ergonomics. Here the ergonomics are good, they're not amazing. Spyderco tends to do really, really well in terms of feel in hand. Cold Steel does okay with feel in hand. They do really well with retention, but maybe not as well with comfort. Spyderco does great with comfort and ease of use. All right, so value for dollar at $80 in Canada, you're getting VG10 steel, you're getting FRA handles, you're getting steel liners, and a pretty strong lockback. For your same $80, maybe a little less if you really shop around, you're getting AUS-8 steel, you're getting the strongest knife on the market, you're getting G10 handles, and you're getting a knife that's going to do everything. Both of them are extremely high value. You're getting a lot for your dollar in both of these blades. Overall, can I call one better than the other? Well, depends on what you're looking for, because the most cost-effective Spyderco is pretty well the Tenacious lineup, right? So here's the Tenacious. I've got the Ambitious here as well. And so these guys are very reasonably priced, you know? Great little blades. They're going to function pretty well for most people. However, the blade steel is not great. The liner lock is good. It's certainly passable and acceptable. But is it the best thing ever? Well, no, probably not. And when I bought this knife, I paid $45 for it. Now, I know I got a really good deal. Now, on this knife, I paid $55. And I hate to say this, but in this comparison, the American Lawman definitively blows the Tenacious out of the water. The steel is better, the lock is better, the comfort is better, the blade shape is better. I mean, there's just, you know, when you compare these two, there's really no comparison. Now, often you would be paying $10 or so more. I think in the US, you know, you're probably paying around 55 bucks for an American Lawman. You're probably paying more like $35 to $45 for the Tenacious. And so, you know, yeah, you're adding a little extra dollars to your purchase, but my point is, if you're just going to buy one knife that you can depend on forever, I think you're hard-pressed to go wrong with a budget Cold Steel. Not so with a Spyderco. If you just want that one knife that's going to last you forever, hey, I think the Mannix would do a good job. I think the Para 2 would do a good job. I think even the military would do a good job. Maybe the Yojimbo would do a good job. But, okay, all of those knives are over $100. Right? Every single one. Where Spyderco, where Cold Steel, for under $100, you can get a knife that you can count on for anything, anytime. All right, so value for dollar, I think both have good value. It depends on the price point. If you want a $50 knife that's going to do a whole lot, I think a Cold Steel is the way to go. If you want a $100 to $120 knife, that's extremely good value for dollar. I think Spyderco is the way to go. So there's a bit of a balancing act there, okay? Now, one thing I will say is that the upgraded steel, the CTX XHP that Cold Steel is offering now, changes that discussion, okay? So, for example, I'm really waiting to get this knife in the CTX XHP. I'm going to get the Tanto, I believe. Now, what would I compare this to then? I'd have to compare it pretty well to the Para 2, and I actually think it would compare very well with the Para 2 in the upgraded steel. Right now, of course, I would say, hey, the steel in the Para 2 blows it away, right? So, you know, things are changing in that whole discussion as we speak. I know a lot of the Cold Steels and the upgraded steel are not out yet, but, you know, give it 6 months and this video could be very, very different. I've yet to see I don't have a good sense for the cost, the price point on the new steels, so I won't be able to speak as much to where the value is going. I still think you're okay. If you're coming in under $100 and you're getting that upgraded steel, you're doing very well. If they're way overpriced, I mean, if they're much over $100, then I start going, I'm not so sure. All right, so let's add one more sort of piece to this puzzle, okay, and say overall, what are we gonna do with these blades? Okay, where do these companies really shine? And here's where I think Spyderco really shines. I think Spyderco has nailed the everyday carry blade that has a lot of pride of ownership and has a lot of collectability. Okay, look, great EDC, great EDC. Pretty good EDC, great EDC, great EDC, great EDC, right? We're still going. Good EDC. As you guys know, I'm going to think this is too small. Most people would say this is too big. So we've got two extremes here. I would steer away from this one more toward this one. Some people would say, no, steer away from that one and toward this one. But still, both of these are very good EDC blades. And we haven't even looked at the Manix 2 yet. Manix 2 is one of my favorite knives overall. Certainly one of my favorite Spydercos. But I just think the value on this is excellent. You can buy the plain, the non-DLC coated version of this for like around $100, and you're getting 4 inches of blade. You're getting a super hard use knife. You're getting something that's well built, made in the US. These are really hard to beat. Okay, so where do I think Cold Steel really shines? In everyday carry blades that are highly collectible and have an extremely high level of pride of ownership, because they are very well made. They're really cool. You can get them in all kinds of really cool sprint runs and variants. So Spyderco, I think, really excels in pride of ownership and extremely good everyday carry. Now, Cold Steel, on the other hand, I think excels. Here's a great everyday carry knife that could flex into hard use. Here's another great everyday carry knife that could flex into hard use. Here's another really great everyday carry knife that could flex into hard use. Here's another really great carry knife that could flex into hard use. Now, here's where we got to tip the scale. Here is a not so great everyday carry knife, but great for hard use and for combat. Okay, here's another not so great everyday carry knife, but great for hard use and for combat. So, I think Cold Steel, although they have knives that wouldn't be combat knives, right? Tough light. They have knives that wouldn't be as hard use. They have, you know, maybe the Tylite series and stuff like that. Overall, their kind of niche is for the person who says, hey, I want to carry a knife every day, but I have in the back of my mind that, you know, maybe I'm a police officer, maybe I'm a firefighter, maybe I'm an EMS worker, a soldier, whatever. I'm someone who needs that knife to go above and beyond the call of duty and really be able to be relied upon almost to the point of a fixed blade, okay? In those cases, I think that Cold Steel really shines. I think that's kind of their niche. If you want an everyday carry knife that's going to bring great pride of ownership, where you walk down the sidewalk thinking, hey, I've got a really awesome knife in my pocket, I think that's where Spyderco lands. One other thing where I think Spyderco really outshines Cold Steel is in what I'm going to call the high-end carry. Okay, so you carry a knife like this. This is the Spyderco Zabo. It's not cheap. It's high-end materials. It's really attractive and cool. And Spyderco has a bunch of knives that would fall into this category. Okay, the Rubicon right now, the Domino, the Techno, there's a Bowie that's all titanium handle, the TI Military, the TI Native. There's a bunch of these high-end, high-priced Spydercos that fall solidly in the category of high-end carry for real knife guys, and Spyderco definitely excels in that sort of niche. Okay, so that's how I see the comparison between Cold Steel, there's my Recon 1, and Spyderco. Let's get the military here to stand in for the Spydercos. Both great companies. I love the knives from both of these companies, which is why I have so many of them and why I'm going to keep buying them. Great blades, okay? They are just great. I just think that depending on what you want, if you want hard use and dependability, Cold Steel comes out ahead. If you want, higher end, higher collectability, higher pride of ownership, better overall EDC because of the lightweight and because of the smaller size, I think Spyderco comes out a little bit of ahead. All right, so that's my thoughts. Go ahead and let me know what you think about this. I know there are some rabid, crazy Spyderco fans out there who have everything that Spyderco has ever done and just, love Spyderco knives. I've seen some of your collections. I'm totally impressed. And I know there are probably some people who who feel the same way about Cold Steel. I'm going to say maybe not as many, but go ahead and weigh in with what you think about how these two companies stack up, and maybe share a little bit of what the blades are that you have and what you think of them. Talk to you later, guys.